Okay, 7:30 in the morning, February 18th this morning. So this is not the first snow we've had. This is not the first cold we've had. It's only 14 this morning, which is actually pretty warm for mornings for us. And that's because of the snow layer and the clouds that we had. Have kept it warm. But typically it's around 0 overnight. So that's about 30 degrees, 32 degrees below freezing. Okay, so that's pretty dang cold. Everything freezes up. Obviously, nothing is safe. The snow, it's about 3 inches, so not a lot. But I was just thinking about the disaster that's going on in Texas right now with all the power outages. We've lived in Texas 3 different times, 3 different places. Love Texas, love the Texas people. So the nicest people, the nicest place we've ever lived is in Texas, where people are just good people. We haven't met more good people than any of the other states we've lived in than in Texas. We have family there still, friends there still. So I just got to thinking, we live in this house right here. This is a manufactured home, 6-inch walls, stringent quality control when they build these things. These things are sealed. They're solid. They are as insulated as a home can be. And still, we run our if we didn't run a wood stove, our propane heater would be pulling electricity and propane almost 24/7 this time of year, because many days it doesn't get above freezing in the winter, December, January, February. A few days it does here and there, but most days it doesn't. And it's often below 0. And we've had minus 25, of course, was the coldest we've seen this year. Minus 25. So that's what, 50 something below freezing. So dang cold. So not efficient, right? Then we talk about earthships. If you don't know what an earthship is, just look it up. This is how we need to be building houses, and this is how we plan on building our house someday. Now, this is not as efficient as the earthships they build in Taos. If you don't know who Mike Reynolds is, please look him up. To me, Mike Reynolds, we talk about famous people, actors that we like, and we, whoever we idolize. To me, the people we should be idolizing are the people that are making real change, and people that are one of the persons that's making real change is Mike Reynolds. And he's been building these earthships for over 40 years. And he has them dialed in where they stay 70 degrees year round. And I mean 70 degrees. We've stayed in probably 8 or 9 different models, and the very newest ones are totally amazing. And it doesn't matter if you lose your power. You lose your propane, you lose your electricity, it doesn't matter. Your grid power can, of course, they're off grid, their battery, they're solar powered as far as electricity goes inside, but they don't have any heat source. They don't have any cooling source at all. They are based on solar gain and thermal mass, and their houses stay warm. He's engineered these so amazingly and so perfectly that they stay right about 70 degrees year round. And I don't mean go down to 60 in the coldest times. They might go to 68 or 67. Okay, that's the biggest difference in temperature that we've seen when we've stayed in his earthships in the winter. They are totally amazing. Now, this is not as efficient because this is a single chamber design, but this earthship style greenhouse is based on the principles that he teaches. So you can go to earthship school, you can have Mike Reynolds build you a house, you can try to build your own like I'm doing here and screw it up and make all the mistakes I've made. I should have gone to earthship school. It's what I should have done. And before I built this, but I'm learning as I go, and I'm making all the mistakes, so hopefully you're learning from my videos. But I just had to make this video today because I'm thinking about all the power outages in Texas. Of course, we have the infrastructure here to handle that. We're somewhat used to that, and Texas just isn't used to that kind of 100-year kind of storm. And we've lived in Texas when we've had ice storms, and it screws up everything. The ice gets so thick on the power lines, it drags them down, it destroys them. We've been without power for a couple days in Texas when we lived there in one winter, and it was not a happy time. And it is dense, cold, moist, cold. They're much colder feeling than it feels here, even though it hit minus 25 here. Let's just go inside and look at the temperatures. So I used to lock this because I kept tools in here, but I'm not keeping tools in here anymore. I'm not sure why I lock it. But let's just bring our feet off and see what the temperature is in here. So again, 7:30 in the morning, you can see it snowed all day yesterday. It was cloudy all day yesterday. Snowed, yesterday afternoon it snowed. It was cloudy all day. It snowed yesterday afternoon into the night and all night. So it wasn't a heavy snow, but it was enough to accumulate about 3 inches So you can see the plants are just flourishing. And this is February, remember. So we're starting to warm up. The coldest part of our winter is over. Let me just back up here so you can kind of see. Citronella, I don't know what all these plants are. There's some parsley, green beans, peppers. We can go into all the plants. Tomatoes. Those are tomatoes back there. That's broccoli right there. Those big ones right there. These are peas right here. Dawn pulled some peas off yesterday. The green beans are starting to make green beans. And we'll come around and look at these in a minute. There's some onions. These are tomatoes over here, of course, covered in blooms in February. What? Does this even make any sense? And there are tomatoes on here. Hopefully they'll start turning color soon. So what does this say about this design? When plants are growing in southern Colorado, when it's rarely even been above freezing, and we don't heat this or cool it in any way. So this is all thermal mass on the back wall here. And if you watch my build videos, you know how this works. And solar gain, the sun warms it. It does warm it up to in the 90s here during the day, even in the dead of winter. And it cools off to about in the mid 50s. And right now, of course, it didn't shine yesterday at all, and it's 52 at my head height. So up here where the heat is collecting, it's even warmer. And you can see, we know that because the heat's starting to melt the snow up here already, even though it's 2 or 3 inches thick out there. And this will be the last to melt off down here. So it's always cooler down here, a little bit warmer at my head height here. So I'm about 5'8". And then of course up here in the very top, that's where it's the warmest. It's probably 5 or 10 degrees warmer up there. So what does this say? If the plants are green here, they're growing, they're producing. Dawn harvested broccoli yesterday. I think so. A lot of the broccoli, she's cut off the plants. She cut it right there. There was a broccoli head there. A lot of these little sprigs on the top here had broccoli on them. She cut those off. The broccoli is just delicious. She's been harvesting Swiss chard here. These leaves are 18 inches long. You can see my hand's 9 inches long, and these leaves are just enormous. 10 inches wide, and that's amazing. There's some more Swiss chard. There's some more different kinds of lettuce. I don't know what all they are that she's grown over here. Another pepper plant. There's a squash plant back there, or a zucchini. I'm sorry, I think that's a zucchini. And okay, February. What is that? A ladybug, and it's crawling. It's probably not as warm as it's going to be, but it's moving. This is a real ecosystem. So when they build earthships, like they do in Taos, the whole front of the house has a planter just like this that you can grow your vegetables, grow fruit trees. You can grow stuff year round, literally. And winter, summer, it doesn't matter. It's going to grow. And it's just mind-boggling to me. And today's another perfect example. So 3 months of hard winter, not our hardest winter here in southern Colorado by any means, but pretty dang cold at times. And still, the plants are doing really, really well. Let's just see here. There's a green bean right there. And there were some peas on here. There's a pea right there. So not a ton of peas. These haven't produced a ton, but they produce some, so that's cool. And let's see. The water tanks that are back here that are buried in the ground and insulated. Nothing heating those, right? But we can come over here. And just with this little solar pump, okay, so all I'm trying to say is this stuff works. Mike Reynolds knows what he's doing, and I just wish that I had paid attention 20 years ago and went to earthship school and built a house like this, because it would be fine. Now, this is just one chamber. This is how they used to build the old style earthships, and they did get cooler because they were only one chamber. The new style earthships have a greenhouse in the front like this, and then they'll have another glass wall. Well, wood and glass, of course, with doors. And then the inner chamber where the living quarters is, like the living room, the bedrooms, the kitchen, the bathrooms, all that. That's what stays about 70 degrees year round. The greenhouses in Taos don't have that perfect climate control. even though they'll get to the low 50s, but they get really, really warm in the day. If the sun actually shines in, they'll hit 90 and 100 degrees in the middle of winter. And that's just based on that's just because of their design. Now, it's 52 degrees. Why are these plants still doing so well? Because all this thermal mass, all this dirt is keeping its temperature. This concrete wall here, this concrete floor, these tire bales back here that are covered in concrete lath, this is all holding its heat. The soil here is much warmer than the temperature out here, if that makes sense. So the roots are staying very, very warm, and that's why the plants are doing so well. So, rolling blackouts, rolling power outages, you know, an off-grid earthship has its own power, makes its own power, takes care of its own sewer, collects its own water. Everything works just like a normal house. And you run a washer, you can run a dishwasher, you can run a dryer, all that stuff you can do, refrigerator. Nothing really changes. I mean, there's a few little things you have to make adjustments for, but when you don't have an electric bill, you don't have a heating bill, you're not paying thousands of dollars a year in propane like we are to heat that modular home out there. Why are we building houses like that still? Why aren't we building houses like Mike Reynolds does? That's just, and I'm asking myself that more than anything because I still haven't made the switch, but that switch is going to come someday. Look at this kale. This citronella plant is just enormous. Crazy how big it is. Dawn had to trim this plant because it had grown so much. It was hanging down on the ground and growing across the ground. We were tripping on it, so she trimmed that up. Of course, these would not survive. These are outdoor plants. She brings them in here during the winter just to keep them alive so that she can take them outside again next spring. So that's kind of cool. Okay, so, you know, growing up in southern New Mexico 20, 30 years ago and living there, we used to hear about Mike Reynolds up in the north in Taos and how these people lived underground and reused their water 4 times. I was like, oh, that's not even sanitary. How could you, that didn't even make any, that's awful. And then, so, you know, we moved here about 10 years ago or so. My wife said a few years ago, she said, oh, let's go stay in Taos and for the weekend. I was like, great, we'll go eat some good food and see some cool stuff. And she says, yeah, and we're going to stay in an earthship. And I was like, what? We're going to stay in a, and I kind of knew what she was talking about, but she's like, yeah. I'm like, is that safe? Is that sanitary? Is that, and she's like, no, they're very different now. They're very efficient now. They're very clean. They're very, you know, it's like staying in a nice hotel or a nice house. You'll be impressed, she said. And I was like, okay, whatever, we'll try it. And then of course we left there realizing that, oh, holy cow, this is what we got to do with our life. This is how we should have built our house 20, 30 years ago. Had I known this 20 or 30 years ago, this is what we would have done. What is wrong with us? Why did we buy a house or build a house the traditional way, the conventional way, when we could build a house like this and we never have an electric bill as far as heating or cooling our home goes? We always have plants inside. We'd be able to grow our own food inside. We could recycle our own water safely, and it makes sense. So I encourage you, if you don't know what an earthship is, look them up and understand at least how they work, because there are some principles you can apply to your own conventional home and to make your own conventional home better. So, but if you can build one, all the better. And if you can go to earthship school, which I still need to do, that would be even better, because then you can save a lot of money doing your own stuff or building your own stuff because you understand the principles of how to build it. Of course, I'm making all the mistakes here because I thought I knew what I was doing and I didn't. So if you are keeping track of my build, please do pay attention to the details. There's a lot of details. I've detailed the heck out of this so you understand what my thinking was when I went to do it, and then the mistakes that I made and how I had to re-engineer it so that you don't make the same mistakes. Okay. So Mike Reynolds is just way ahead of his time. There's some basil there. We had basil and oregano on our bruschetta the other night. Don just came out and clipped it, and it was so good. Yeah, so Mike Reynolds just way ahead of his time way back then. Of course, now we have rolling blackouts. We have water shortages in multiple states. We have, we're trying to conserve power as much as we can because of the demand our nation is putting on our power grids. And when we could build a house that uses very little power, this is what we should be doing. And I'm not telling you what you should do, but for us, this is what we should be doing what my wife and I feel like we should be doing. We want a house that we can get old in, that we're not going to have to go out and chop firewood when we're 80 or bring in firewood or burn firewood just to stay warm. Why do that when we could build a house that if it's built right, it'll just stay warm and it'll stay cool in the summer? It's like walk in these earthships. We stayed in one in the summer, and when you walk into the inner chambers, the living quarters, it's like walking into a cave. It just feels cool and it feels so good, and it'll be 105 degrees outside, and it's just so nice. It feels so good. And if you haven't experienced, go rent one. They Airbnb these out all the time. It's a couple $100 a night. There's several models. I encourage you not to stay in the old ones that look cool, or maybe they look weird, like the Phoenix. Not a perfect design, not like the newest designs that are very, very efficient. So try to stay in one of the very newest ones if you can, because that's where you'll get the best experience. Last thing, some of the arguments that I used in my own head, and I've heard other people say, is, well, solar panels, battery banks, those are expensive to replace when you have to replace them. Yeah, they are. And, the batteries are getting better and better now, 10 years, 15 years. Supposedly people are expecting to get out of their battery banks, and it's several $1,000s to replace those. And that's a lot. That's a lot of money. But, in a conventional home like our home right here, when we lived in Texas, we had to replace our septic system. Um, that was like $8,000. Our HVAC went out. That was a few $1,000s to get that fixed. Here in Colorado, our well went out. That was several $1,000s to get that fixed. Okay, so an Earthship doesn't mitigate all those things, but with a conventional home, you have things that can go out that cost a lot of money. My in-laws had to replace their air conditioning system, and that was several $1,000s. Okay, so when you compare all those expenses of owning a home for 30 years, and you're going to have to replace maybe or two or three of those systems over 30 years, or maybe you want to stay in the home all your life. Maybe you buy the home at 25 and you want to be there when you're 75 and you don't need it anymore, or 80. That's a long time, and you're going to have to replace systems on your house that's cost a lot of money. So what do you have to replace on your Earthship to heat it? There's no HVAC. There's no air conditioner, right? There's no heater. As far as the well pump goes, let's say you live out in the country and you have a well, and you got to have somebody pull the well pump for you because you can't pull it. That's several $1,000s to replace the well pump. The Earthship, the pump comes from, the water is in tanks behind your house. The pump is a small pump that you can like unscrew and take the plumbing off yourself, pull it off the wall, put a new one on, screw it on, and you're done. That's the well pump. That's how you get water pressure. So that is not expensive. It's easy to do. So when I'm looking at the Earthship and I'm thinking about getting old and what is it going to take, we hear stories about our friends that live up in the mountains that had to give up their mountain cabin home because they're getting older, they're in their 70s, and their shoulders can't take splitting firewood anymore because they're burning 6 cords of firewood in the mountains to stay warm in the winter. Well, that's fun to do if you're 40, but when you're 70, it's not sustainable, and your shoulders go out and you need a shoulder replacement, or you just had your hip replaced and you're down for 3 months, and you're just trying to keep your house warm. It's sad to see people give up their beautiful homes and their in the country that they love to be out in nature, when if we had just built our homes right, or bought a home that was built right, we can get old in these houses. We can literally get old in these houses where I'm not having to split firewood when I'm 80. I'm not having to pay for an air conditioner or a heater, or pay for propane to heat my house. I can just live in it, take care of my little garden inside, grow the vegetables or the fruits that I want to grow. And it just makes a lot of sense. Still February 18th. It's about 1 in the afternoon. You can see the snow's melted off quickly off the front of the greenhouse. So the sun's only been shining in here for about 3 hours, probably. Maybe 4. Ooh, it's warm and humid in here. Humid, which is unusual for the dry desert. This will be a little bit better perspective of what's growing in here. It's kind of a jungle, yeah. Those broccoli plants are, man, over 3 feet tall. And we've had to tie them up in a couple places because they're growing so tall they're just falling over from their own weight. Okay. And let's just see how warm it is. It's warm in here. So this thermometer's in the shade. It's always on the back of this pole right here. So the sun never hits it. Morning, evening, daytime. So it is a true 85 room temperature, air temperature right here. And of course this log's 16, 18 inches in diameter. And so it is not warm at all. It'll be warm on this side, a little bit warmer, but you know, wood doesn't transfer heat very well. So that's a true 85 degrees in here, and it feels like it. I'm in a long sleeve shirt and it's uncomfortably warm already. I've only been out here for a minute or two. So the whole idea behind this, if you haven't watched my other videos, is the sun shines in through these windows. It hits this back wall and the floor, which is thermal mass. The sun warms this wall, and this is tire bales, not rammed earth tires like they use in Earthship technology, but tire bales. And so there's over 20 tire bales in this wall and the sides here and on the back, so it warms those. That soaks up the heat. The only direction the heat can be re-radiated, or that the tire bales can lose the heat from, once they soak up the heat during the day and then the sun goes down, they tend to they'll lose the heat, right? The heat will radiate back out, and it can only go this direction because we have insulation on the top of them and down the back of them as well, all along the outside. So the heat can't go out toward the outside. It can't go up through the ceiling or the top because that's all insulated. This side is not insulated, so this is where the heat re-radiates back into the room and keeps the room at a stable temperature. And that's the whole principle behind thermal mass, how Mike Reynolds uses thermal mass, rather. And he uses rammed earth tires, of course. And so this was a little faster, this production, to put up tire bales in a day or two. And then, of course, the back wall of this, all back behind here, is covered in dirt. The sides are covered in dirt as well. So there's that insulative property. And some people call those earth bermed construction or earth bermed homes. So this has got several principles of different building technologies all in one, and it works really well. 85 is just miserable for me right now, but the plants are loving it. Yeah, so here we are. This is okra. Yeah. Okra in Colorado in February. Unheard of. So normally we wouldn't plant here until the middle of June because the freeze is going to continue. It'll keep freezing at night and kill plants outside till the middle of June. Look at that green bean. It's enormous. And there's some other ones back there as well. There's a couple of tomatoes right there that I can see. That are just soaking up the sun in this 85 degree temperature. So what else do you have over here?
Swiss chard. And
that's the zucchini in the corner over there?
Zucchini. Herbs. Lettuce. Kale.
The kale looks so pretty. Look how full it is.
Yeah. And it's been cut a lot. So
we saw the broccoli where you cut it. We saw the broccoli this morning where you cut it. So is that onion?
Onions.
Is that one onion there? A couple onions?
Uh-huh. Several onions. Bell pepper.
The bell pepper. Okay. And then what was this right over here?
It's lettuce.
This is all lettuce growing right here.
Lettuce. Eggplant. Basil.
Oh, that's the eggplant. That's what you were telling me about the other day.
Yep. It's getting ready to flower.
Where?
Probably right here.
Oh, right there. Okay. Nice. What is this one right here?
Geranium. It's a flower.
So the tank gauge that we put on here is working well. So this is the level that the pipes come out. The tanks actually sit higher than this. So, or the bottom of the tank's a little bit higher than this, than that right there. But this is the level of all the plumbing all the way around that goes over here to the sink, and that's where the pump is pumping the water she's pumping with right now. It also goes around that side to go to the planter, so we can fill the planter. And right now, while she's pumping, the water level's here, but when she lets off, it kind of restores. The pump's pulling water out of this line back here behind the wall, so then it kind of equalizes right here. This is the full mark right there. So the tanks look like they're about halfway empty to me. So we'll have to fill them in the next month or so. There's a little okra. The ladybug helping it out. This camera doesn't like to focus close.
The ladybugs, I think, reproduced in here. This geranium is so pretty.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna bloom a bunch more.
One of the unintended consequences of having the greenhouse is everything outside by the time February, March rolls around has been gray and brown for so many months, and you just long for green. Your eyes and your brain needs to see some green things, so it's so nice to come out here and so refreshing to breathe humidity in this dry desert environment where we live, or this dry southwest environment. And those are all. Are these carrots going to take off, or are they just getting too much shade from all the other plants?
Carrots just take a long time.
They just take a long time.
Yeah, and they're probably not getting enough sun.
So all these plants have been in here. We planted them somewhere around November, wasn't it? When we started planting.
Yeah.
And so it's mid-February, so mid-January, mid-December. It's been about 3 months, 3 to 4 months. So, but yeah, to be able to come out here in the middle of winter when everything's gray and cold and breathe humidity, it's nice and moist, and see green stuff and smell the tomatoes and all the plants, and the okra has a distinct odor too, the citronella, all these plants that smell so good in here. And it's just really helps us get through winter a lot easier. I think it's been so good to just come out here and soak up the heat and breathe humidity and see the green stuff. It's so nice. So I thought this tomato plant here, Dawn, it's as tall as I am. So it's off the ground in a pot there, but the pot, that's got to be over 4 feet tall. Do you agree? And all these little blooms will turn into tomatoes?
Yeah, and everything's been grown from seeds, so.
Oh yeah, so everything grew from seed. True. Of course, we couldn't get any plants from anywhere. Nobody was selling plants in the late fall here in Colorado because nobody's planting them. So
Here's some more tomatoes.
there's a bunch even way up here in there. Nice.
Have a lot of tomatoes. These are the super sweet 100.
Man, there's a bunch of them. I guess we better be ready to use tomatoes pretty soon, huh? That's an understatement. Tomorrow's December 1st in southern Colorado. I don't think that's... I saw a butterfly just like that about 2 weeks ago. Maybe 3 weeks ago in here. Or whatever, I don't know what it is, a moth or a butterfly or what it is, but... I don't know what that means. Is it happy in here?